I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 3rd, 2018 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Brown, would you please take the roll?
Florence. Here. Mumgard. Gaines. Here. Glover. Here. Jaworski. Here. Klug. Stube. Here. Engberg. Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
Yes, we do.
And a current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. Ms. Powers, Administrator's Report, please.
Thank you. Council members, just a reminder that the first limited Community Redevelopment Authority meeting is going to be scheduled for the end of July. So if you're on that committee, Allie will be reaching out to you to schedule that meeting. And another reminder is the next council tour for the Field House and Community Center is scheduled for July 24th at 6 p.m. And just like last time, meet at the construction site trailer at 6 for that tour. The department heads have been busy working on the fiscal year 18-19 budgets, and those budget meetings will be beginning on July 12th and following into the next week. So those should be scheduled, and those should be on your calendars. The library is updating their community needs assessment as required by the state, and this assessment is done every 3 years. And a portion of that assessment is questioning or submitting questionnaires to you as council members, as the governing body, on what you think the strengths and weaknesses of the library are. And so Allie, in the next couple of weeks, will be sending that survey out to you guys to fill out for that assessment. Just an update on the family ER land sale. In the business park, it is progressing. They have asked for an extension until the end of August, and we do believe that it'll go through prior to that. And we are anticipating that the agreements will be coming up in the next couple of meetings. So just to give you an update on that. And finally, Taylor Chapman has been hired to fill the administrative department's secretary position here on 3rd floor. And one of her new roles is to train for the city clerk duties. So in addition to seeing her on 3rd floor, you'll also be seeing her training with Nicole and eventually kind of running some of those meetings. So when you see her, please welcome her. So we're pretty excited to have that position filled. That's all I had, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Engberg, second by Councilman Glover. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item D1, Ordinance 1812, an ordinance to approve a change of zone from agricultural AG to LI Limited Industrial for the property legally described as a tract of land containing all of Lot 2, Oxbow Way Replat 1, a platted and recorded subdivision in Sarpy County, Nebraska, and part of Tax Lot 2 located in the east half of the northwest quarter of Section 2, Township 13 North, Range 11R of the 6th PM, Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located southwest of the intersection of South 150th and Schramm Road. The applicant is Opus Development, LLC, Oxbow Phase 2. Is there a council member that will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Glover. Thank you. Item D2, Ordinance 1814, an ordinance to amend sections of Chapter 135 Noise Control of the Papillion Municipal Code to define the term incidental relating to sounds emanating from industrial facilities, to add a new section having to do with the waiver of the maximum permitted sound levels, DBA, for certain civic, office, commercial, and industrial uses, to add notice and process requirements having to do with designated entertainment venues, to renumber certain previously enacted sections under Chapter 135, and to provide for an effective date. The applicant is the City of Papillion. Is there a council member that will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Jaworski. Thank you. Item E1, Ordinance 1811, an ordinance to amend the 2017-2000 fiscal budget. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Item F1, Resolution R18-0090, a resolution to approve an amendment to the master fee schedule pertaining to non-emergency EMS patient transport, Papillion Landing Fieldhouse usage, oversized overwidth Memorial and grading permits, sewer and water connections, water usage, water taps, and inspections and administrative fees. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180090? Motion. Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Stube. Do we have any proponents? Any opponents? Any council discussion? Mr. Stube.
Thank you, Mayor. In the oversized width section, I think we should probably amend that to include overweight also. And I just had a discussion with Mr. Thompson over there, and he agrees. And so I would say add that, and then also include the same fee.
In that same area?
Yeah.
Is there, so it's a motion to amend. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilman Gaines. So we got a motion and a second on the motion to amend. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote on the motion to amend. If you can please re-vote. The system just took a hiccup. We can do voice vote if you need to.
Jaworski? Yes. Stube?
Yes.
Engberg?
Yes.
Florence?
Yes.
Mumgarde?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Glover?
Yes.
Motion to amend passes. So the motion is amended. So do we have any proponents on the motion as amended? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote on the motion as amended. Can they do it online or need votes? Okay.
Florence?
Yes.
Mumgarde?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Glover?
Yes.
Jaworski?
Yes.
Stube?
Yes.
Engberg?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item F2, Ordinance 1804, an ordinance to amend Article 2, Development Definitions, Article 31, Civic, Commercial, and Office Design Guidelines, Article 32, Industrial Design Guidelines, and Article 37, Signs, and Chapter 205 of the Papillion Municipal Code to create an I-80 sign corridor with corresponding sign regulation adjustments and to clarify the regulations applicable to non-conforming signs. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1804? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman, sorry, the motion was by Councilman Ingberg, second is by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Jaworski?
Yes.
Stube?
Yes.
Engberg?
Yes.
Florence?
Yes.
Mumgarde?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Glover?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F3, Resolution R180115, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a preliminary plat for the property legally described as a tract of land located in part of the southeast quarter of Section North, Range 11 east of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the northwest corner of South 132nd Street and Cornhusker Road. The applicant is Tribido LLC I-80 Logistics Hub. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? And if you'd state your name for the record. And if you would speak up, we're having a little, the microphone's not on with the voting issue we've got. So if you could just speak loud so people can hear.
give you another image of what this building could look like from the standpoint. So again, if you've been down on 144th and Capehart at all, or 144th, yeah, I think that's right, Capehart there, you can, oh, we got the microphone, all right.
We rebooted. Council, could you re-log on, indicate that you're here? We rebooted the voting system. Thank you.
And then, so there's also a special use permit that's attached to this preliminary plat that will also help regulate the design of the buildings and screenage and those things. But we are under conditional approval. This is in conformance with your comp plan. It's existing. This is existing zone today. And again, this is a preliminary plat. So a final plat and the zoning and the special use permit will have to come back through this body for approval. And we'll just continue to work with staff on the project and keep this moving forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R180115?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Stube. Second. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Mr. Stube.
Yeah, Jason, just a couple questions. Obviously, this is preliminary plat, so there's a lot of things that take place, but I see you had some renderings of buildings. What's your timeline, and when can we expect something to come out of the ground that's going to look like that?
You know, there are a few, and in particular, I don't know if we want to go back to the overhead here. There are a few users that I know we are talking to. I really cannot, at this time, divulge who they are because they're in negotiation still, particularly in this area. Almost 500,000 square feet of building. So we'll actually take these two. If that user comes to fruition, that would be coming out of the ground as soon as probably fall of 19. And then I know we've had some conversations with this user here, which is 700,000 square feet of building. It's a national user. You can probably think of who it could be in the marketplace, and at the end of the day, we don't know at this time when that'll be. So the goal of the project, obviously, is to have these shovel ready when these users do come. They come out of the ground, they're ready to go, and we have those sites available. That's what we're missing in the marketplace throughout the entire Omaha, the greater Omaha area. So you bet.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is item F4, Resolution R180117. This is a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a Class I liquor license for MJL LLC, doing business as the Good Life Sports Bar and Grill, 11336 South 96th Street, Suite 109, Papillion, Nebraska 68046, and a manager application for Chad M. McMahon. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? Is the applicant? Oh, thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, my name is Mike Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. Chad's a client of mine that has two places in Omaha now called The Good Life, same name, and it's a very good sports operation. Activities, and it is got great food. I can testify to that. And so does my physique, but I can testify to that. So he's a good operator. We're here for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R180117? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Mr. Mumgard.
Yeah, I've got a question. Okay, I'm taking note that you have been doing business in Omaha for quite some time. I've seen your commercials. You apparently do well there. And now you're going into Papillion. So as an overall picture as to business in Papillion, pros, cons, what is it that's bringing you to Papillion?
I mean, for us, we're big in the community. We started on 180th and Pacific and kind of brought that back to more of a family atmosphere. Since went out to Elkhorn, which is, kind of reminds me of this community as well. Great people, great community. So just saw a need for it out here. And when it came open, we took over existing facility. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a facility that, for whatever reason, decided not to continue to do business in Papillion. It's roughly on the edge of our, our main area. I take it that you see that the growth in Papillion is something that actually attracts businesses like you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a great need for it there. I love the area. So yeah, when we came over and took a look at it, there was just a need. We're big into great service, great food, and a really clean place. We're doing a whole new renovation. We're gonna make it really nice, very family friendly, just a local neighborhood sports bar and grill.
Sure. Well, I mean, growth in Papillion is a never-ending discussion around here. Some people might think it's too big, too fast. Others think not. Over the time I've been here, I've seen a lot of people say, well, I want more services in Papillion, so we have some shopping areas now. I've heard people talk about we need more restaurants. So I take it that you're a good businessman. You've proven your way in Omaha. I've taken you looked at this area and you think this is an area that you can make some money in.
We looked at this area this has probably been now, Elkhorn's been a year, so just shortly after Elkhorn, so just about 11 months. We've been looking at Papillion, just kind of waiting for a spot that fit the demographic, and when this one came available, is actually the same gentleman that owns the building that we're on 180th and Pacific. So they had approached us and asked if this would be a potential location, and immediately fell in love with the area.
And you're doing a complete remodel.
Complete, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll welcome you to Papillion. We will continue to have discussions about how much business we need, how much retail, how much non-retail. So it's good to see somebody like you step in and fill a vacant spot. So welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Jaworski. Oh, Mr. Mungard, can you turn your microphone off? Mr. Jaworski.
Mine's quick and easy. How soon do you think you'll be open?
The goal is by football season, so we're hoping end of August, early September.
Cool.
Any other council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is item F5, Ordinance 1803, an ordinance to approve a change of zone from LI Limited Industrial and GC General Commercial to LI Limited Industrial and GC General Commercial for the property legally described as Tax Lot 7 in the northwest quarter of Section 35, Township 14 North, Range 11 east of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, Nebraska, together with part of the northwest quarter of Section 35, together with that part of the northeast quarter of Section 34, Township 14 North, Range 11 east of the 6 p.m., said Sarpy County, lying south and east of I-80 right-of-way, generally located south of Highway 370, between I-80 and South 156th Street. The applicant is Dowd Grain Company, Steel Ridge South. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1803? Motion by Councilman Stube, second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item, item F6, Resolution R180120. A resolution to approve a final plat for the property legally described as Tax Lot 7 in the northwest quarter of Section 35, Township 14 North, Range 11 east of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, Nebraska, together with part of the northwest quarter of said Section 35, together with that part of the northeast quarter of Section 34, Township 14 North, Range 11 east of the 6 p.m. said Sarpy County, lying south and east of I-80 right-of-way, generally located south of Highway 370 between I-80 and South 156th Street. Applicant is Dowd Grain Company, Inc., Steel Ridge South. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180120? Motion by Councilman Stube. Second by Councilman Glover. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Also related, item F7, Resolution R180120. A resolution to approve the Steel Ridge South subdivision agreement. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180121? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Florence. Any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F8, Resolution R180125. A resolution to approve $150,000 in community betterment funds for the city's share of the Fricky Field restroom and concession stand facility reconstruction project. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180125? Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilman Ingberg. Do we have any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F9, Resolution R180132, a resolution to approve the Sarpy County and City's wastewater agency's proposed fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180132? Motion by Councilman Stube. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Do we have any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is a series of items. Item F10, consideration of a complaint of liquor law violation complaint submitted by 5 residents, citing violations of Nebraska Revised Statute 281322 and 53198 against retail liquor licensees Northwoods Cheese House, the Stave, the licensee at 310 North Washington Street and 320 North Washington Street. This is a very unusual item. I think it's the first time the city of Papillion has had one of these items. A complaint is filed under state law, and state law dictates the city must take action and make a decision within 30 days. Because it is an unusual process, I want to spend some time going through the introduction of what we're doing, and we'll go very slow through the process. So the complainant, the licensee, the city council, anybody who wants to talk, and just general public has an idea of what we're doing. And so in a lot of ways I'll give layman's overviews. The city attorney may fill in and give some legal interpretations, but again, I want to go very slow, very deliberate so everybody understands what we're doing. So some of it I got scripted out because I want to make sure it's real clear. So that's why we're here. What's unusual in this case is the city council is sitting in a quasi-judicial role, which is unusual. We will make a judicial decision tonight. And so it's a different role than we usually play. And so in some cases there's a hearing, which is different than a public hearing. So the next 4 items, and there's 4 items on the agenda, involve a complaint of a Nebraska Liquor Control Act violation, which complainant was submitted to the city by 5 residents on June 25th, 2018, citing violations of Nebraska Revised Statute 281322 and 53198 against the retail licensee Northwoods Cheese House, the Stave, 310 North Washington and 320 North Washington, Papillion, Nebraska. The complaint was submitted pursuant to Nebraska Statute 53134.04, which sets out the resident complaint process under the Nebraska Liquor Control Act. And it does require the governing body, the city, that we must take action under this and dispose of the item within 30 days. Copies of the complaint have been already provided to the city council by the city clerk and have been entered into the record as part of your city council packets, as well as copies of the 2 state statutes referenced in the complaint, Nebraska Revised Statute 281322 and 53198, and a copy of Nebraska Revised Statute 53134.04. A copy of Nebraska Revised Statute 53134 has also been distributed to the city council members and entered into the record along with copies of the Papillion Municipal Code 81-2 having to do with municipal powers and duties concerning alcoholic beverages, 81-4 having to do with licensing standards and procedures, and 81-9 regarding citizen complaints concerning alcoholic beverages, the last of which mirrors state statute. Such statute and code sections provide that a city's governing body has the power to cancel or revoke any retail liquor license if it determines after a hearing held pursuant to 53134.04 that the applicable license violated any of the provisions of the Nebraska Control Act. And I want to reiterate that the full packet the council has was also published online, where we always publish things, so it is also available to the public when we publish the agenda. In terms of process, the city council will first consider resolution number 18029. City council consideration of resolution number 18130 is contingent upon the city council approval of resolution 18129 with option 1 selected, and I'll talk about that later. Thereafter, the city council will only proceed to a hearing on the matter if 1, the city council approves resolution number 18129 with option 1 selected, and 2, the city council approves resolution number R180130 with option 1 selected. If either resolution number R180129 or resolution number 18013 are approved with option 2 selected, the matter will not proceed to a hearing on the complaint. The City Council will not consider resolution R180131, and the complaint will be dismissed. I want to remind the council that in all cases, whatever we do, this must be disposed of in 30 days. The complaint was filed June 25th, and so if for any reason there is a continuance tonight by either the complainant, the licensee, or the council, the continuation must be to a date certain of the next council meeting, July 17th, where we must dispose of the item. A couple of reminders for the public. We have resolutions, which there are 3 of, and we have a hearing. On the resolutions, on each of them, there will be a period where we'll call for proponents and opponents. And I'll explain the positions when we get there. Anybody coming up and speaking as a proponent or an opponent during the resolution will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give a warning right just before the 3 minutes, and then we'll call for it to stop. It's also important that if you do come up and speak, you stay on point on that specific resolution. We'll try to guide if it's getting out, and if it's getting too far off the point, we'll ask the city attorney to weigh in and just remind us, hey, we're starting to get off track. Let's get back onto the resolution. When we get to the hearing, if we get to the hearing, the complainant and the licensee will each be given 10 minutes to speak. And then after that, they will be given 2 minutes each for a rebuttal and a summation. So the complainant will have 10 minutes, licensee will have 10 minutes, complainant will have 2 minutes to rebut and summarize, the licensee will have 2 minutes. That's under the hearing. Under the resolutions, it'll be 3 minutes for anybody. Again, we will go slow, we'll clarify, and I will ask the city attorney to jump in if need be to clarify any interpretation. So that's just kind of some background. So the first is the consideration of resolution R180129, and for anybody who is not an attorney or does not have legal training, there's a fine nuance between what is the difference between resolution 129 and 130. So I'm going to ask the city attorney to explain the differences between 129 and 130 so then people understand what they're discussing, what they're voting on, and then we'll reiterate later. But if you can get a basic overview of the two.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm happy to do that. The first 2 resolutions really address what is proposed on the face of the complaint. And there are 2 parts. So the first resolution will address the actual particular, in fact, I'll quote it from the statute that we're being governed by here tonight, shall state the particular provision, rule, or regulation believed to have been violated. And that those provisions, rules, or regulations are those from the Nebraska Liquor Control Act. It's not generally other types of rules or provisions, but those have to be particular provisions, rules, or regulations believed to have been violated. So that's the first resolution. The second resolution addresses whether the facts that are stated or alleged on the complaint are sufficient to provide reasonable cause, what is known as reasonable cause. And reasonable cause basically can be interpreted to be just or legitimate grounds for a person to believe that a crime has been committed. And so so there are 2 parts again. The first resolution deals with whether the face of the complaint articulates the provision, rules, or regulations of the Nebraska Liquor Control Act that have been violated. And the second resolution, R18-130, addresses whether the facts, again stated on the complaint, sufficiently allege grounds that would give counsel or a reasonable person reasonable cause to believe that a crime has in fact been committed under one of those provisions, rules, or regulations.
And if both of those facts end up being true, then we'll have the hearing to establish the facts. Then we'll take the vote with the third resolution of the determination of the outcome. If either one of the first two do not pass, then there's no finding and we're done. Is that clear to the council? Okay. And again, if you need clarity as we move ahead, feel free to ask. So consideration of resolution number R180129, we'll begin with that, and that's the resolution to determine whether the complaint substantially charges a violation by the licensee of the Liquor Control Act. And again, when you're considering this resolution, the council is directed to look solely at the face of the complaint. So I'm going to ask, and in the packet, each of these resolutions has an option, and I believe those were clear what those options are. So I'm going to ask for the motion, but when you state your motion, indicate if it's option 1 or option 2, and then I'll read that option for the public so everybody understands what that is. So for resolution number R180129, is there a motion and which option? And as they're contemplating that, just for the public, in case somebody did not read the packet, option 1 is the complaint substantially charges a violation by the licensee of the Nebraska Liquor Control Act or the rules or regulations issued pursuant to the Nebraska Control Act. Therefore, the council shall next consider resolution number R180130 order 30 in order to determine, based on the facts alleged in the complaint, whether there is a reasonable cause for the complainant's belief that the licensee violated the Nebraska Control Act or the rules or regulations issued pursuant to the Nebraska Control Act. That's option 1, charges a violation. Option 2, the complaint fails to substantially charge a violation by the licensee of the Nebraska Liquor Control Act or the rules or regulations issued pursuant to the Nebraska Liquor Control Act. Therefore, the complaint is hereby dismissed, and the city shall not consider either resolution number R18130131. 131. So a motion with option 1 charges a violation, we proceed to the next resolution. A motion with option 2 says there is no violation, and we don't move on to any other items, and it's dismissed. Mr. Stube.
Yeah, so clarification with regard to the complaint is that if I look at the complaint from the citizen, they're quoting two different sections, which is section 28 and section 53, which are relevant to city code. Is that correct?
Ms. Ruth Piper.
Well, there are two statutes that are cited on the face of the complaint, the first being 28-1322. And for the council and for those in the audience, that particular statute is really part of the Nebraska criminal code. It is not a statute that comes from the Nebraska Liquor Control Act. It basically is a statute that's cited out of what is known to be miscellaneous crimes and offenses. The second statute that is cited is 53-198, and it addresses places operated in violation of the act or declared common nuisances. If you look at that particular statute, it really makes reference to the fact that there are violations, again, of the act, and that those violations of the act have occurred or have been maintained in the place of business that's been licensed. One of the things that I see is that it keeps referencing in three different places in that statute of violations from the act. And so it seems to me that this section of the statute is dependent upon an allegation of the statute.
Did that answer the question?
Of the act generally.
Okay, I think so, except I do have a concern with regard to 53-198 is that in the information that we were provided, there's no reference to that specific section of state law, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Mumgard.
Okay, let's see if I can wrap my head around the three that we're doing. Seems to me that the Resolution 129 and Resolution 130 is looking solely at what is on the face of the complaint.
Correct.
Whether we believe it or not is not a question. Whether it's true or not is not a question.
Correct.
Did they say the magic words?
Correct.
The last one is, well, what do we do about it?
Based on the facts you heard in the hearing.
Yeah. Do we agree with it or not based on what we hear tonight?
Correct.
So we can adopt the first two and then adopt option 3 of the last one, and the Stave stays in business, no penalties applied.
That is the outcome if the first two are approved and the third one, option 3.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll talk, if it gets past the hearing, I'll talk about the differences between the 3 options and those outcomes, but you are correct in that scenario.
Well, but the hearing on the first two is simply talking about what words are written on that complaint.
No, the first 2 are, say, on the face,
Yeah.
does it warrant having a hearing? And if the first 2 determine that it warrants having a hearing, then we'll have the hearing, listen to the witnesses and the facts, then based on that, you will make your determination with the third one. If the first 2 don't establish anything, we don't even have a hearing because then you've determined that it's not a valid complaint.
Sure.
Correct.
You know, if the complaint is something that can't, even if it's true, can't be a violation of law, then we don't go to the third one.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ingberg.
So basically, the first 2 resolutions we're going to be talking about deals with process rather than the violation itself.
Process and validity of what was written and what was presented to you in the complaint.
Okay. Let me ask this. If disturbing the peace falls outside of the Liquor Control Act, does that make it invalid?
Mrs. Rupiper.
I would say that, again, we need to, what the statute instructs is that before we proceed to a hearing, this body must determine that the complaint sufficiently alleges a violation of the act, not of other potential violations, but a violation of the act. And if it does not, we should not be proceeding. And one caution I would give to the council is it might be easy to be result-oriented and to look down how we might want things to land. But we really are required by the statute to answer the first 2 questions. One is on the face of the complaint, whether it's substantially, the language of the statute says substantially charges a violation. And the second question then, whether the facts alleged are sufficient for reasonable cause.
Did that clarify? Okay. If there's no other council discussion, I'm looking for a motion with the option indicated. And again, if your motion is with option 1, it does charge the violation. And then if that is approved, we proceed to the next step. If your motion is option 2 that fails to do the charge, then we do not proceed to the next step. Is there a motion, and which option? Can you turn your mic on and then repeat that?
I'm going to make a motion, and I'm going with number 2.
So Councilman Jaworski makes a motion to approve resolution R180129 with option 2. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Ingberg. We have a motion and a second. As we do with all resolutions then, I'm going to call for proponents and opponents. It can get confusing of which side are you on. So option 2 was the motion on the floor is the complaint fails to substantially charge a violation. If a proponent then would be indicating a proponent that comes up to speak and a council member voting yes would be saying there is not a violation. If you're an opponent or a no vote, you're saying there is a violation. So just kind of for the audience, proponents and opponents, it gets confusing based on the options selected. So we have a motion on the floor with option 2 that fails to substantially charge a violation. I will call for proponents, anybody in the public that wants to speak on that, just that specific topic, and they will be given 3 minutes. If you do come up, please state your name for the record. Do we have any proponents that are speaking that there is not a violation?
Yes, good evening, Mayor Black and members of the City Council. My name is Sean Kelly, 280 South 87th Avenue, appearing this evening on behalf of the licensee, the Stave. As the city attorney pointed out early on, this is a complicated process and a complicated procedure among state law. Fortunately for everybody here today, it's a really simple case. You look at the complaint, you look what's within that complaint, on the face of that complaint, and it simply fails to substantially charge a violation of the act. We talk about loud noise, you talk about noise after 10, you talk about something in November of 2016. It's not violating the act. And it's really cut and dry whether there's a substantial charge or not. So we appreciate the motion and hope that you'll favorably adopt Mr. Jaworski's option 2. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents? Anybody that does not believe it's a violation? If you could come up and state your name for the record.
My name is Ronald Scott. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit hoarse tonight. I have pneumonia. I'm still pretty good. In Nebraska statute, I have 3 points I want to make. Nebraska statute 29404 is the complaint filing procedure. On Nebraska's website, I wish I could show you guys. On there, it goes down to the bottom of how everything's looked at for the actual complaint, what is supposed to be filed and how a complaint is actually supposed to be taken in. Being a liquor law or a liquor act problem, violation, at the very bottom, there's a thing, it says the complaint is insufficient to show violation of the law. It is not vitiated for redundant matters. Or what that means basically is this law is to surmise a liquor license. Does it violate the code? 2, according to this, it should never have even been filed by the clerk because that complaint doesn't have any liquor in it. It's all about noise complaints, statutes, and so forth. Disturbances, not liquor policies. And that being said, this should be an open and shut thing. I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you very much. Any other proponents? And if you could state your name for the record.
My name is Heath Honeywell. I live at 319 North Adams. And to put that into relation, that is directly west or right behind the Stave. I don't have a lot of facts like these guys, but I can tell you it's firsthand knowledge. I've lived there for about 2 years. In that time, I've never had anybody come onto my property. There's simply a fence with an access gate that they could if they wanted to. I've never had individuals enter my property, belligerent, drunk, disobedient, or any fact along those lines. As far as noise goes, I think I'd be the first person who would complain if it was an issue. Most of the time, it's comfortable. It's a very soft level. We can sit on the porch. We can listen to it. It's more like ambient light.
I'm going to hold you just real quick.
Yes.
And this is for everybody, again, there's real fine nuances between these 3 resolutions. Getting into the facts of the impact of the Stave, is it right, is it wrong, that type of thing, that's probably what we'll handle at the 3rd phase if we get there. I don't want to cut you off, but I am a little bit.
No, that's right. I just know
so
that
we'll
noise
probably
was
call you
brought
back.
up and
If we get to that point, we'll call you back up. Again, this is there a violation of the act? And I know it's pretty technical, but that's what we're looking for at this point. So we do have you recorded in the minutes. We've got that. And if we get to that 3rd one, it would be appropriate to come back up as well and finish it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize for cutting you off. Any other proponents on the complaint, and is it a substantial charge? Are there any opponents, those that would believe there is a charge or a violation? Yes. And if you'd state your name for the record.
My name is Monica Anderson. Obviously, I've met all of you before. We've had numerous meetings regarding the noise coming from the stave and the issues that we've had with it. This has been a 2-year issue. I believe that the first time that I'd even made a complaint was May of 2016, and that was regarding when the 402 was playing at the stave, and it was a pretty large band with amplification.
I'm going to do kind of the same interruption. On this specific resolution, all we want to know is the charge substantially violated? Not the facts behind it. That'll be later on, but is the complaint a valid complaint?
The complaint,
under the rules and regulations?
Under the rules and regulations, and I'm going to be a little bit off subject here. This was the tool that I was given when it came to alleviating the noise from that business. Going into this, I didn't know what I was heading into. I've tried every avenue up until this point. This was my last resort. Do I want to see them lose their liquor license? Absolutely not.
We'll decide that on the third one.
Correct.
As far as substantial violations.
But I do have a reasonable right for peace in my own home. I have a reasonable right to raise my windows and not have to hear noise coming from anywhere. Well, outside of regular traffic noise or what have you. So that is where my complaint comes in. But again, this was my last resort. This was the only tool I was given when I met with the city council and the mayor.
Ms. Rupert, because it's happened both on proponents and opponents. Again, I know it's a very fine point, and me not being an attorney, I was given layman's. Can you give a little bit of clarification for proponents and opponents?
Sure, and this is for everyone's benefit. So the proponents and opponents, the segment that the mayor is asking for right now is to address the complaint itself. And this first resolution, R180129, is specific as to the specific provisions, rules, or regulations that are stated on the complaint and whether they are sufficient to substantially charge that a violation has occurred.
Okay.
Of the
Liquor
Control Act.
Maybe you could clarify then. On the Liquor Control Act, I did cite, or did tag a couple of things where in section 01207.07, outdoor area shall mean outdoor area included in licensed premises, which is used for the service and consumption of alcoholic liquors and which is contained by a permanent fence, wall, or barrier approved by the commission and shall be compliance with all building and fire codes. Under section 013.2, in connection with each event, the applicant must provide a written showing of the estimation of crowd and how it intends to assure that alcohol will not be served to minors and intoxicated persons. Next one.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
But again, we're looking at the face of the complaint at this point in terms of what is here in black and white.
Okay.
And so all comment, proponent and or opponent, is to address what is on the face of the complaint at this time.
So
and
these
not
sections do
additional
not
other
pertain to that
sections.
second statute that was cited.
Whatever the complainants are basing their action on, their complaint, it must be stated specifically, and it says so in the statute. It must specifically be stated on the face of the complaint.
Okay. I believe that's it then.
Okay, thank you. And again, I understand on both sides it can get very confusing, so if it does go to the next step, there will be a time for a lot of comment period beyond this very fine point. Are there any other opponents? Council discussion, Mr. Mumgard.
Okay, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I'm sitting here listening to an explanation that says that it is not, if I'm getting it right, that it cannot be, will not be a violation of the Liquor Control Act or anything else referenced by this statute to have a bar set up a band day after day, play the music as loud as they can play it, and that would not be a violation of law. I cannot imagine that would not be a violation of law. And my puzzlement comes from, I think, I'm reading the statute that was given to us, and it says that we're supposed to receive a signed complaint. that a provision of the act, which is what we've talked about, is being violated. It also says any rule or regulation adopted and promulgated pursuant to the act is being violated. Now those, as I understand it, are rules or regulations adopted by the Liquor Control Commission. It would seem to me that the Liquor Control Commission might have a rule or regulation that says you cannot use your license to disturb the peace. And that's where I'm perplexed. Is there a rule or regulation that says that?
Ms. Rupepper.
All right, in response, I'm going to read again verbatim from the statute that is governing this process. And I'm looking at 53-134.04. And I'll state point.
Mr. Jaworski, can you turn your mic off just so Mr. Mumgards can go on? Thank you. Go ahead and go back in. You'll be back into the queue.
I thought that this was presented to us under subsection 3. Our form says 04. But the one I'm looking at, 04, is applications.
The process is governed by 53-134.04. And
okay,
I will
go ahead.
read it. I will read it verbatim. It says, the complaint shall state the particular provision, rule, or regulation believed to have been violated. And the local governing body is satisfied, basically that'll be the determination, whether the local governing body is satisfied that the complaint substantially charges a violation. And so
Just for point of reference for the public, if anybody has the packet up, because it is online and I know some are following it, that is on the 53-134.04 that they're discussing is on page 9 of the packet.
And so if I can just make one other statement, the inquiry right now is not whether there might be a provision, rule, or regulation somewhere in the Nebraska Liquor Control Act that could have been specifically articulated. The question is whether the complaint that we are reviewing this evening has made that specificity, has stated the particular provision, rule, or regulation believed to have been violated.
Okay, now here's my problem, is 134.04 asks if we are, tells us that we're supposed to look to see if we are satisfied that the complaint substantially changes a violation of what? Well, earlier it says, the complaint shall state the particular provision, that's a statute, rule or regulation believed to have been violated. So what I'm looking for, is there a rule or regulation that this complaint states has been violated? And it seems to me that if there is a rule or regulation that says you cannot disturb the peace by your activity in a license, then this complaint has stated a rule or regulation that has been violated. I'm looking beyond the statute. I'm looking for the rules and regulations.
I understand, and there is a full set of rules and regulations, as you're aware. It is not, in my view, part of our inquiry here to answer that for any complainant that comes forward. It is their job to state what the particular provision, rule, or regulation is, and not for the city to be providing that. That, in essence, was part of their homework in bringing a complaint.
Mr. Mumgard.
Okay, I see your point of view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ingberg.
I was just going to say that I'm going to support Mr. Jaworski's motion. He kind of beat me to the punch. My understanding is that it has to be to even get further to a hearing, there has to be a substantial or substantiated as charged, so to speak. To me, when I read the complaint, it does say noise and different things, but it's not very specific at all. It doesn't cite particular dates, other than just started this date, and it just happens. To me, it doesn't make any logical sense that we're going to have a hearing about something as general and as open-ended as that. You know, we could talk about nuances of the law and what specifics there are, no offense to you at all, but, you know, to me, it also has to come down to common sense and being reasonable. You know, to me, you know, citizens should have a right to complain. And we've heard this complaint before. This isn't anything new. But we addressed those complaints, I thought, sufficiently in the past. Apparently not to the satisfaction of 4 or 5 people. But on the other hand, it doesn't rise to the level, to me, to have a hearing. And it's not because I don't want to hear from anybody. We certainly have heard that. But I also think it behooves us to when we have a complaint come forward like this, that we don't base a hearing on generalities. There should be more specificity, I think, and that's why I'm going to support not going further with the process.
Mr. Jaworski.
Thanks, Mayor. I got something that I kind of want to put on. I would like to put an email on the record, if that's allowable.
Is it specific to this resolution?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's actually was sent to me and Mr. Glover. It says, we own the building directly across the street from the Stave. Occasionally we are there during the evening hours. We have no complaints whatsoever. They are not noisy. We are probably the closest building to the Stave, and there has never been a problem. They are great neighbors. And the people that signed it were Phil and Cindy Wright, 103 East 4th Street.
Is there any other council discussion? Mr. Glover.
Is it appropriate to ask a question of the owner?
As long as it's specific to this topic of the resolution.
And again, if I can remind council, this is a narrow question right now, and the question is whether the complaint, the face of the complaint, provides that level of specificity so that you all know what violation is being alleged.
Okay, then let me say that I would have to agree with Councilmember Inkberg in that this complaint does not address to the level that we should be voting yes and moving this forward. When I look at it and talk about, and it talks about there's almost every Friday and Saturday night there's music, and that's part of the complaint. We put a procedure in place, and it allows the business to do that. So I don't know how this could be part of the complaint when we have a procedure in place and we have nothing on record that shows that the business violated our procedure.
As a point of clarification, I think you're alluding to our noise control ordinance.
Yes.
The noise control ordinance is not alleged, first of all, but it's also not part of the Nebraska Liquor Control Act.
But
and so it's really not relevant to the specific
Wasn't it
question.
not in the complaint that there's music nearly every Friday and Saturday night?
When we get to the next resolution, which is about the facts, the alleged facts on the complaint.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mumgard. No, not yet. Not yet, ma'am. Mr. Mumgard.
Well, okay.
And I'll explain in a second.
Okay. I'm going to vote for Councilman Jaworski's resolution because I think it's, given the legal advice that we're getting, it is accurate. The legal advice is very specific that when you look at the piece of paper that was filed, it has to specifically and particularly say, list what was violated. It lists 2 statutes. The form, which I believe follows state law, says you can also list a particular rule, code, city ordinance, or regulation that may be violated. Well, if there is a Liquor Control Commission rule that says you cannot play loud music to the level that is disturbing the peace, if that rule exists, this complaint does not particularly allege it. So you didn't use the magic words. You used half of them, but not all of them. And given the legal advice that's been given to us, that all we can do is look at what you've put here, I guess Mr. Jaworski's resolution is accurate. But then on the other hand, I don't want anybody to walk away from this session thinking that it is okay in Papillion for any licensee, the Stave or anything else, to play loud music to a level that disturbs the peace of the residents, and that this city council will sit here and say that is okay. I certainly won't sit here and say that is okay. I don't particularly think the facts would ever show that the Stave is doing that, but that's not what we're looking at the moment. All we're looking at is whether it was there. But I'm going to vote for it simply because the words aren't there on the complaint. But when you read what they say the Stave has been doing, if a bar is doing that in Papillion, they need to get in here and we need to discuss it, because that's not the way you operate bars in Papillion. That's not the point here with Mr. Jaworski's resolution, so I'll vote for his resolution, given the legal advice that we've been given.
Mr. Jaworski.
Couple things. This is a touchy subject, there's no doubt about it. But also, where's the Stave's voice in this? He is doing what he's supposed to be doing. I'm sorry, but it was, I'd say, 2 weeks ago, a week ago, I drove by, they had a band. I had my windows up, I had the radio on in my truck. I heard absolutely nothing. Nothing. And I was 10, 15 feet from their entrance as I drove down 84th Street. So I get it, but something has to happen here where there's a happy medium, or whatever we call it, or whatever we can call it, because he's being singled out an awful lot here. And if I was him, I'd start thinking of the other route that I would have to go, because he is pretty much doing what he's supposed to be doing. And I do believe the police officer that went there the night for the 2 times that he got called there, that they didn't pick anything up. So I don't know. It's frustrating, and something needs to give. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Ingberg.
Real quick, because we kind of got off subject here a little bit, got into testimony. As I said earlier, this isn't about the complaint. I have a personal opinion about it, as Mr. Jaworski does. I wouldn't say I don't disagree with him at all. But the point that we're taking here and a vote on is whether we feel the complaint is substantially charged, as we've been asked to do by statute. I don't think so. I don't think looking at a generality provides us impetus to go forward and to have a hearing. End of story.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? If not, we're going to call for a vote. And again, I want to be clear on what we're voting for, both so you understand it and for the public. If Resolution R18-0129 passes with option 2, which was the motion, that means the council has determined that the complaint does not substantially charge a violation by the licensee of the Liquor Control Act, the complaint will be dismissed and there will be no further action on the complaint. So a yes vote dismisses the complaint. A no vote would keep it alive for the next discussion. Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. The complaint is dismissed. Next is, that's all the regular agenda items. Next is committee reports. I don't believe any committees met. Do we have any comments from the floor? Any general comments from the floor? And if you'd state your name for the record. And just for, I know we got a number of people here. This section on comments from the floor, since we don't publish a specific agenda item, the public doesn't know what we're talking about. We're not in a position to actually respond back. It's just a point for you to make a comment and listen, and you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mayor. Mark Narkey. I've been a resident of Papillion for 24 years with my wife. We live at 534 East 3rd Street. I've known the Evages for a long time, from my church, grown up together. They run a respectable business in this town. This town needs to appreciate the tax money they're bringing in. That is a place you can go. If you stand over at their bar, you cannot hear the music. You sit on their patio, you can visit with your friends and enjoy an evening out. And for people to constantly, not people, a couple of people, to constantly pick them out and harass them is unspeakable. What can we do to the people that harass, the business owners of Papillion? We need small businesses to stay. Look what Amazon's doing to our country. Brick and mortar is shutting down every day. Do people need to sit at home and have a glass of wine alone? Or can't we go out and socialize with our friends? Let's make Papillion great again. God bless America and God bless Papillion. Thank you.
Thank you. For decorum, I would ask that there are no responses to public comments, no clapping. I want to respect both sides and have decorum in the room. Yes, and if at the podium, if you'd state your name for the record, and we have 5 minutes.
My name is Sandra Lab, and I kind of smell a double standard here, because the reason I didn't speak when they asked for those is she specifically said, please speak to what we're focusing on, don't speak to the noise. So I sat there and I was quiet. But then she allowed him to read a letter that says, oh, they're wonderful and they're doing all this stuff. I can tell you that I live a half a mile from that, and I can hear it, and I can identify the music, the song, the name of the song. And I want to address the other one where they say, oh, it doesn't bother us, it doesn't bother us. That reminds me of when my neighbor's dog was barking at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I called him and I said, could you please keep your dog quiet? I'm trying to sleep here. Well, it doesn't bother us. So if it doesn't bother them, then it doesn't bother anybody. But I think it's crazy. Who was it that said that they drove down the street and they couldn't hear it? Do you live right next to the Stave? Do you live close to it? Do you live close to the Stave?
Excuse me. The section for comments from the public is for us to listen.
Oh,
this
okay.
is not a published agenda item, so we're not going to dialogue.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Then I'll just state it this way.
Thank you.
If you don't live close to the Stave, it doesn't bother you. But I live clear down where they're doing that new community center, and I can hear it. So what does that mean, that I have really sharp ears? Or is everybody else just saying that because they want to see the Stave and they want to go there and drink? Because I can tell you that the whole Stave area is maybe about as big as this place, and I can tell you that I could go down there and sing without speakers and without a microphone, and you could hear me in that entire place. And I think it's time they start thinking about the residents, that it does bother. Because I kind of feel like if you're going to allow one person, like when she said that we weren't supposed to talk about it, and I actually listened, and I said, well, I'm not going to get up and say anything about it. And then she allows him to read about how it doesn't bother and how he does that. Well, I think that's kind of like a double standard here. And I think that, see, I have better things to do tonight than this, but I don't want to go out on the weekend and have a nice evening. The other night, there were deer that came up. A nice evening, go outside and listen to music and hear the music. And just because it doesn't bother one person, that doesn't mean that I don't hear it. And no, I'm not against them when he was like tooting around about how we're against them. I'm not against them. I'm against the music. I don't know why they need speakers for that. If they would just respect the people that live around there. But I can tell you one thing too, that in my experience of doing any activity work, activist work.
1 minute.
Okay, any activist work, I'll say if you have complaints, go tell somebody about it. And they'll go, oh no, we can't do that. There are a lot of people that are just cowards to speak up. And I'm not, because I have a right to my peace and quiet. So that's it.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comments? And if you'd state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Brian Cerny. I live 939 feet away from the property line of the Stave, which is approximately 3 times closer than the last person that spoke. And I would just like to reference Newton's law of inverse square. And right now what we're hearing is a bunch of theoreticals, and it's loud to me, it's not loud to me, it's sort of loud, I think it's loud. If you look at the actual mathematical physics behind the way that sound waves travel, in order for the sound waves to be above 55 decibels at that person's residence, they would have to originate at 109 decibels at the Stave. And this is not me, this is Isaac Newton. So unless the Stave is originating sounds of 109 decibels, that would be 55.28 decibels at that person's location. So 109 decibels, according to different handbooks, is the same level of sound that you would hear at a full-blown rock concert. Human ears begin to experience pain at 120 decibels. So there is no way that anybody sits at the Stave and listens to 109 decibels coming out of that speaker or that person's mouth and is not plugging their ears and trying to figure out why the hell it's so loud. So physics, Isaac Newton's physics, and you can check it if you want, inverse square law of sound. It applies to radiation, gravity, electricity, sound, and light, all the same. It's not my opinion. This is scientific fact that would have to be 109 decibels in order for it to be over 55 decibels at her location, and it's not happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I apologize. I couldn't breathe before.
If you could restate restate your name for the record.
My name is Ronald Scott. I live at 808 Fort Street on the far side. We talked about respect. One thing I'd like to kind of bring into that is with this law we're talking about.
Can you move the microphone up just a little bit? Thank you.
I'm sorry, is that better?
That's good, thanks.
We talked about respect a few minutes ago. One thing I would like to piggyback off of respect is I think we should respect the precedents. And that's one thing I think that should be cleared up. The normal precedence for a noise complaint is the police. Piggybacking off of a Liquor Act law to facilitate a noise complaint is a dangerous precedence that the city would be setting. Only reason I'm speaking right now is I suggest that there's some way to clarify that that doesn't happen again if it is not allowed, if it's not in the law, so that there is no way that any establishment serving liquor or alcohol can be attacked via this jurisdiction, this code that we've been discussing tonight, under the precedence of a noise complaint. That code, the precedence that code sets is if the Liquor Act is being violated, underage drinking, you have evidence, not piggybacking off of a noise complaint. And that's dangerous. That's a dangerous precedence, because next thing you know, if we're just piggybacking random laws off there, it's sexual harassment. And you guys are going to be dealt with all kinds of other crazy stuff because it's a precedence. That's all I want to say is just be careful. And I think there needs to be some clarification.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Again, you state your name for the record.
It's Paul Sidwell, lifelong resident here in Papillion. And I just, first of all, thank you all, and especially to Councilmember Jaworski. Your comment about driving by, I agree 100%. You can't hear it. There happens to be 2 members of the band that played 2 weeks ago here that I happen to be friends with, and heard the complaints while I was at the Stave. I walked up to the corner by St. Columbkill just to see if you could hear it. Could hear nothing. I walked down to the bridge. You could hear nothing. This is a business that's here. It took over residency from an old business that sat there empty for years. These are the type of people we need in this town. I have friends that come from Vista, Ralston, Omaha, here to Papillion specifically to go to this place. It's great to have them here, and we cannot run people like this out of here. And from what I understand, these people have been complaining for a long time. It's time to cut them off. This town needs the business. It's good for the community. There's nobody complaining. They don't trash the place. There's not a lot of drunk people walking around. They shut down by 10. So I thank you for supporting this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, any council comments? Just a couple of updates from the last couple of weeks. Ms. Myers and myself met with a developer for another major development on Highway 370. Some concepts we'll be bringing forward, and that'll go through the planning process. Ms. Hips and Ms. Myers and myself also went down to Lincoln, met with the Nebraska State Tax Commissioner regarding sales tax and transparency of information, had a direct dialogue with the commissioner himself. Also attended the Sarpy County Economic Development Corporation's board meeting, talked about some of the go-ready sites, one of which was presented tonight. And then Ms. Powers, Ms. Hanson, and myself had a meeting with Chris Toynton, who is the CEO of the Omaha Metro YMCA, just as we're both thinking of community needs, wellness, and that type of thing, how we can cooperate on a number of things, and good discussion, got a good relationship with them. A reminder, I think you got an email today, but if you didn't, Thursday at 10 a.m. at 88 Tactical, the governor's going to be doing a press conference, and he's going to be releasing the 2019 infrastructure package and how that impacts the Omaha metro area. Don't know why he picked a Papillion business to do it by the interstate, and make some suppositions. It might have just been convenient. It might be there's a major project going out there. I don't know, but it might be of interest to go out that if you're available Thursday at 10 a.m. Any other council comments? Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilman Gaines. Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
We are adjourned. Thank you.